Hey guys, it's Amelia, but not the pilot, just Amelia, and we are back again for another book year in review. Is that what I call it? I don't remember. It's the end of the year. It's the end of 2023. We made it, and I'm just gonna take a look through books that I've read in 2023. I think I read 80 something this year. My goal was 50 because I was working on a dissertation this year. I got my master's degree. So, call me Master of Letters. So I definitely didn't have as much time to read, so I was trying to make myself less stressed out by aiming for 50, which I easily did. But then mentally, I was still aiming for 100, which I did not reach. But we did a lot. We read a lot. I read a lot more like nonfiction scholarly books this year, so I'm sort of proud of that. And I read a good amount. I got through a good amount of my TBR. So, let's get into it. First, I'm gonna do my Goodreads year in review thing, if I can find it. So I read 89 books this year. My shortest book was only 52 pages. Oh, so I read, and my longest one was 2,583. I read the Crimson Rivers fan fiction this year. It is a Marauders era James and Regulus fanfic that's half like Harry Potter mixed with Hunger Games, which I thought was really interesting, and everyone was talking about it online, so I was like, I need to know what it is. And so I read it. It was the longest fanfic I've ever read, probably the longest book I've ever read, and I didn't love it, but I did make an entire video about it, so please go check that out. But that's the longest and shortest book because I read the full fanfic, but then there was like a little alternate ending booklet that the same fanfic author had put out, so I also read that, and it was only 52 pages apparently, so there's that. Then we have my average book length is 380 pages. That's interesting. I guess, yeah, I'm reading like they're large, but they're not like insanely large, but they're not like normal size. I miss reading 200-page books. Like, why do people not write 200-page books anymore? I feel like everyone and their mother is doing like 300 plus 400-ish pages. It drives me nuts. My most shelved book, obviously Harry Potter. I do reread it every single year in September, so I wonder what my most shelved book would be if I didn't have this on here every year. Then my least shelved book is, what was this called? Sea Monsters. Okay, this was like one of the books I read for my dissertation. However, it was more about like ecological art history stuff, and it was extremely not helpful for my dissertation, so love that came through on this. I forgot I read that. My average rating's 3.9. Yeah, that seems about right. The way I rate things is, it's really weird, because I wish there was a different rating system for books, you know, because it's out of 5, right? And I don't want it to be out of 10, but I want there to be like an opportunity to say something like, this changed my life. Because 5 stars to me, there's a lot of books that I read, I'm like, this is a good book, 5 stars. Like, I will recommend this to other people, I loved it. But then there's books that are 5 stars, but they're like 5 plus, because they changed my life, and I will not stop talking about it to anyone. And then, like, I usually make, like, if the book is, like, fine, it's average, whatever, I give it a 3. And then it's like, if it was really, really good, but it just something was off, it's a 4. And then if I hated it, it's a 1 or 2. Yeah, between 1 and 2, it's a little, I don't know. There's really no difference to me between 1 and 2. Anyway. My highest rated book was Crimson Rivers. Ahaha! I gave it a 1 star, I think. So that's sort of funny. My first review of the year was What You Gonna Do? So I read this book. I was thinking it was gonna be like a Halloween Hallmark book, which is a genre that I love. I guess I had planned on reading it in Halloween last year and then never got around to it, so then I ended up reading it like the first week of January while I was on vacation, and it was like so smutty but in a bad way. It was so very unsexy and I hated it. There was a lot of, but I was like complaining about it to my friends while we were on vacation. I was like, girl, you will not believe what just happened. It is so weird. Alright, so let's look at all the books I read Oh, Ordinary Monsters I really didn't like. January was rough. I also read Spare. Didn't like that either, but it was fun. I did it for the bit. Anatomy is one of my favorite. I keep thinking about it. I keep coming back to it. It's actually like right here, I think, on my shelf. But I love that whole that duology. I think those were one of my favorites of the year. I'm glad My Mom Died was also an amazing little memoir. Babel was also really good. Lightning Struck Heart I was really disappointed in. The Winter's Promise Quartet was really interesting. I have mixed feelings about it, but I do think it was such a very cool world building thing. I've never read something like that before. Femina is the one and only nonfiction book I will recommend to you guys. It is about women in the medieval ages, and how they were not as oppressed as we think they were. Obviously, gender inequality was rampant back in the medieval ages and also now. But this highlights, I think, 9 different women of the medieval era who were making moves. And it was so, it was just like so heartwarming to see like women in a completely different time period from us, like thriving. I don't know. I really liked it, so I recommend that one. All of my other nonfiction books I read for school for my dissertation, and I found them interesting, but I do not think you guys will, so I will not recommend them, but you'll see them throughout here. I reread Ninth House in preparation for Hellbent. I didn't love Hellbent as much as I love Ninth House, I will say. Tress and the Emerald Sea was really fun. I've never read a Brandon Sanderson before, and I definitely want to read more of his, but his books are so big that I don't have time for it. Sun and the Star, I was really excited for, but then was really disappointed. I still liked it, but it wasn't what I was hoping it would be. I started reading the Witcher series this year. I think I only made it 2 books in, and then I gave up. I don't like it. It's too sexist. Is that the word I'm looking for? Misogynistic? I don't know. It's like high fantasy, but nothing fun about it. And he's just a man, and he goes around and he sleeps with women, and then if he doesn't sleep with the woman, she's a witch. Ooh. I read Anne of Green Gables this year for the very first time. I had literally never read them, I don't know why, and I loved them. The first 2 or 3 I think were good, but then I started slowing down after that. I did not finish the whole series because they started to get a little boring. I do want to finish them eventually, and I was watching the TV show. The TV show is so good. I reread the V.E. Schwab, Darker Shade of Magic this year in preparation for her new book, which I read at the end of the year, which was also great. I loved it. Yellowface was another one I was blown away by. It was one of my favorite books of the year, and I wasn't really expecting it. Like, I thought I was gonna like it, but I didn't think I was gonna like it that much. It was delicious. It was so much drama. It was such an interesting, like, psychological look at society and people, but also had such important topics like racism and the publishing world. I don't know. I'm interested in publishing, so I also thought it was really interesting. Tom Felton's memoir was bizarre. Legends and Lattes was not the Dungeons and Dragons vibe I was really hoping for. It was like too cozy fantasy almost. Nothing really happened. Portrait of a Scotsman was actually a romance novel that I really enjoyed. I reread Red, White, and Royal Blue since the movie came out. Spellbound was cute. Page Boy was interesting. I started reading Olivie Blake books this year. I'm about to start reading Atlas 6. I don't know why I left it as the last book to read out of her like main ones that are released. But I started with One for My Enemy and I loved it. I don't usually like Romeo and Juliet retellings, and I was obsessed with this. Masters of Death I also really liked. I do feel like her books take like a while to process. Like they're so wordy and sort of like brainy that you need to like actually sit and focus and read them. They're not just like a fun little read. But the concepts are really interesting, but then I think I gave them both 4 stars because they weren't, something about them I was just like, I wish there was just a little bit something different. But I really love her characters, and the concepts are so interesting, and they're really like fancily written. But I also read Alone with You in the Ether, and I also really liked that one. It was really interesting. And I'm about to read the Atlas 6 trilogy, So I will hopefully be making a video about that in the new year, so stay tuned. Lives of Puppets was also one of my favorites of the year. I have mixed feelings about TJ Klune. I've read a handful of his books before. I feel like his earlier ones are really not that good, and then the newer ones I'm really enjoying, but at the same time, I love how unapologetically queer they are, but I also feel like it's weird that there's no women in his books. And I feel like once you notice that, you can't unnotice it. And I just wish there were women that existed in his books. And sure, you could argue, okay, in this new one, he had a woman robot. But that was it. There's like maybe 2 characters who are female in the whole book. It's crazy. I also read Savage Song this year by V. Schwab. I'm slowly working through all of her books. I haven't read everything yet, so I read that one and also Near Witch this year. I still haven't read Dark Duet, which is the sequel to Savage Song, but I did enjoy Savage Song. I understand why it didn't do well. It's a little confusing to understand, especially as a kid's book. Then we have the Magnus Chase series. I've always wanted to read them, and I owned them, but I just never got around to reading them. I think I read the first one, but I forgot what happened, so I had to reread them all. I love them a lot. I love anything that Riordan puts out. They're always very fun. Least favorite books of the year, probably the Kingdom of the Wicked series. I read all 3 just because they were so bad I needed to know what happened. This was like a new low for me. I don't think I've ever read a book that was like that hard to get through in the weirdest way. It was like fun little whatever's happening tropes, okay, but like the plot made no sense. And I was like, it wasn't even like easily predictable bad plot. It was like the plot made no sense, so much so that literally I had no idea what was gonna happen next, but in a bad way, which I've never seen done before. So Chalice of the Gods came out this year, the new Percy Jackson, very exciting. I also have been rereading Percy Jackson books in preparation for the TV show that has just started on Disney+, but also because I follow this podcast called The Newest Olympian, where it's an adult man reading Percy Jackson for the first time, so I've been reading along with him. I read Life and Death this year, which is the Twilight gender bent rewritten, and Smire is making that cash. I enjoyed every moment of this book because it was so funny bad. She basically, literally word for word, took Twilight and just changed all the pronouns and the names. It was really funny. I didn't buy it. I will not support her monetarily, but I thought it was very funny. I reread Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes in preparation for the movie. Yet again, that book is so good. I really, really like it. It is quite long. However, rereading it, I was like, damn, like, oof. And the movie was great, but I do feel like you're missing a lot by not getting, like, Koryo's inner monologue of how terrible a person he is. And how he basically, he just really likes the idea of Lucy Gray, but he doesn't know anything about her, and I just love the ending. The mystery ending is so good. I still can't get over it. Like, it's just such a oof. When you read it in the book, even reading it again, and I knew it was coming, I still was like, ah! Like, this is so good! This is peak literature. I read the anthology In These Hallowed Halls, which is supposed to be a dark academia anthology with a bunch of different authors, including Olivie Blake and ML Rio, who wrote If We Were Villains, which is one of my favorite books of all time. I hated it. In general, most of the stories were not very interesting. It was just not good. I feel like it was really hyped online, and then it was not that good. And then I read Fourth Wing. Besties, I have something to say. Why? Why are you obsessed with this? It is bad. I will say this. I also don't like ACOTAR, and I feel like they're on the same type of vibe plane, like fantasy, romantasy. I will say I think Fourth Wing was better than ACOTAR. It was more interesting, more tropey. I'm not sure if that's just because I like dragons more than I like fairies, but the writing is so bad. Please check out my Fourth Wing video. I am reading the second one that just came out, Iron Flame, because I'm interested in the drama surrounding her whole publishing thing. But I'm really struggling through Iron Flame, so we'll see if I ever finish it. And then I ended the year with some pretty great books. I read Good Omens for the first time, because I've always wanted to watch the TV show, but I've been waiting to read this book. I love Neil Gaiman. Good Omens was so good. Like, 5 stars immediately. So good. Very funny, and I loved it. I loved every moment. The new Heartstopper book came out. I had indeed read all of it before already because I keep up with her webtoon posting, so it wasn't really exciting and new, but I did buy it and I was very excited about it. But at the same time, a surprise, at the end of the year I read A Study in Drowning simply because I had seen it all over online and I was like, let me just pick this up. It was great. I really enjoyed it. It was all spooky, it was very gothic horror, dark academia. And then I read Leslie Jones's memoir because John Green had recommended it, and I don't know, maybe it's better as a written book, because I listened to the audiobook, because I listen to all memoirs as audiobooks, and she definitely is off script a lot, and she's just telling you whatever stories she wants, and her life is interesting, but also she just sort of, like, rants a lot about different things, and it was sort of negative, but then she would put a positive twist on it, being like, but you should never give up, and you should blah blah blah, and I don't know. And she didn't talk about it SNL as much as I thought she would. But now I know about her whole life story, so she had it rough. So that is the end of my year. Now, I don't know if you have heard about this new website, but someone has created basically like a Spotify Wrapped version of Goodreads. So, like, let's take a look at that. It's called myyearinbooks.com. So it loads everything. Interesting. Okay. So I would say this is pretty much like a mix between Goodreads and Storygraph. Interesting. So I read 40 young adult books. That's a lot. I read 10 Rick Riordan books. Yeah. And then I chose 5 random 5-star books from my year. Interesting. I don't know. It was cute. Alright, now let's get to the good stuff. Storygraph. So if y'all don't know what Storygraph is, it's better than Goodreads, in my opinion. It's got all these different little stats. It has all these cool features, and they're constantly updating things, and they listen to you when you ask them to do things to the website. Let's see. Alright, so I was doing a reading streak on Storygraph, so you're supposed to post how many pages you read every day, and I did it for 243 days of the year, so pretty exciting. I'm hoping to do all 365 next year. I guess we'll see. And I love these little pie charts. Oh, I clicked on this by accident. So we have all different moods. So I mostly read adventurous, mysterious, dark, and emotional. Oh, and funny. That tracks, yeah. My least read is relaxing and inspiring. Love that. And we have pace. Most of my books are medium pace. Interesting. Okay. I feel like I definitely like fast-paced books more, though, because then you can't put it down. Page number, mostly 300 to 499, yeah. Audiobook, mostly 8 to 15 hours, okay. Mostly fiction, but I read a lot of nonfiction this year, so that's pretty exciting. That's a pretty big change from last year's graph, I think. And then this is the part that I really find interesting. So these are all my genres broken down by little bar graphs. So I got a lot of fantasy, young adult, middle grade, yep, romance, LGBT, history. Interesting. And then I started tagging my books this year on Storygraph. So they all have 2023 tagged. Maybe I shouldn't have done that because it makes the graph really skewed. But I started tagging if the author was female, male, genderqueer, whatnot. And where they're from as well, just because I'm interested in diversifying that, so I was hoping this could show me what I'm lacking. So obviously I'm reading more female than male. Male isn't even on here. Oh, there it is. Never mind. Under 25. Interesting. And I'm mostly reading American authors. That's really interesting. I feel like I had a lot of UK authors, but I guess not. I'm gonna try to diversify that next year. I've also been tagging where the book is set, so UK seems to be the main location, which I do enjoy, a book set in England or Scotland. Or East Coast. Yeah, I feel like I've been noticing recently that a lot of books that I read are set on the East Coast. I rarely read books that are set on the West Coast, and I think it's so interesting that most fantasy books or whatnot are always set in, New York, Boston, like the northern area of the East Coast, or the UK. Those are the two options. It was very interesting. I've also been tagging tropes, so if there's a trope in the book, I could like find these later if I'm looking for recommendations or something, and also genres and queerness. I've also been tagging what kind of monsters are in each book. Cool. Alright, well, I'm definitely going to continue doing this next year because I thought that was really interesting. I'm going to hope to try to diversify and change up from what I have, my stats from this year. I mostly read in print, but it's 50%, which is interesting. This is like almost a perfect pie chart. However, 25 plus 25 plus 51 does not equal 100. Bizarre. One book doesn't have a format. Interesting. And then my most read author was Riordan. That makes sense. MVE Schwab, but also Christelle Dabos. Montgomery is the Anne of Green Gables author. Got tracks. Wow, this graph is crazy looking. So I read the most in, was that August and September? That's when I just finished my dissertation, so that makes sense. I had nothing else to do. And I least read in April. Huh. That's weird. I don't know why. I don't think I was particularly busy in April. I would say I was really busy in like June and May, so I don't really know. It's pretty weird. Mostly 5 stars. So this is interesting. I was explaining my rating system before, but I thought it would be more spread out well. More well spread out. I do like that on here you could rate things as 0.5s, because there are certain books where I'm like, this was bad, but they were definitely trying to do something. Thank you for coming. If you have any book recommendations you think I would like based on what I've said, please let me know down below. Or if you just want to chat about books, I would love to chat with you. My current plans for the rest of this year, I think there's 3 or 4 days left in this year. I don't really know. I'm on vacation. I'm hoping to start and also finish the Atlas 6. I'm hoping maybe to finish Iron Flame. I don't really think that's gonna happen. I also want to finish Sandman. I've been reading the Sandman comic. And that's it, I think, for this end of this year. And then starting next year, I'm hoping to read the Atlas 6 trilogy, finish the whole series. Our Dark Duet by V. Schwab. Little Thieves is in my January plans. I have a lot of books that are like sort of trendy that I'm interested in reading, like The Ship of Theseus and Cain's Jawbone, but I also feel like they are going to take a bit of time mentally, and I sort of just like to go through books really quick, so I don't know if I'm going to actually do those. I'm hoping to read more Neil Gaiman next year, and I hope to read more classics. I didn't really read any classics this year. I guess because I went a little heavy on classics. Last year I read every Shakespeare book, so this year I didn't really do too many classics. I don't think I read any, actually. That's sad. So I hope to diversify my reading a little bit more next year. But I also hope I continue to read some more nonfiction books, because always good to broaden the mind. Thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed this video. Bye!